Good morning, Sharon.
Good morning, Joanne. How are you?
I couldn't be better now that I'm with you. I'm with Sharon Waldecki. She's a retiree turned health and food researcher, currently living in beautiful, sunny Marco Island, Florida. Yeah, I know. I wish I was there with you. She's enjoying her retirement after 40 years in finance, along with 25 years simultaneously building and renovating homes on the side. That's impressive. She recovered from a severe PMR, polymyalgia rheumatica diagnosis using food as medicine. And when I met her just a short time ago, just in January, on New Year's Day, actually, it was a beautiful meeting
Yes.
because there's no mistake that we were supposed to meet. She explained to me how she had just recovered or had recently recovered from years of being ill with this diagnosis. And now she's here to tell the story how she nourished herself back to health with whole foods and non toxic living. This is a big one, Sharon. I'm so excited.
Thank you. Well, I'm so excited because I never imagined I could cure myself. I just never imagined that was even possible to such a degree. And I'm just so thankful to be here and in the physical condition I'm in and pain-free.
Yes. And you are so beautiful and vibrant. And it's amazing because you
Oh,
wouldn't
thank
know
you.
that you wouldn't know that you were so ill. And when you get into your story about how you were almost immobilized, it's amazing. This is a story that needs to be told, and I'm so excited for our listeners to hear about it. So why don't you bring us in
Thank you.
to explain, first of all, your background and there's stress levels in your background as far as work is concerned, and we
Yes.
can't forget about all that. But let's come into the PMR diagnosis a couple of years ago and explain the PMR, what it is, and you can bring the listeners into your journey that way.
Well, I'd never heard of it before. I was surprised when they told me that was my diagnosis. But basically, polymyalgia rheumatica, it means pain all over. They described it like arthritis. You go in and you have pain in your fingers or your joints. Well, it's inflammation, and they call it arthritis in the Western medical world. And so polymyalgia rheumatica, or PMR, is pain or basically kind of arthritis inflammation all over your entire body. It completely gripped every part of my body. It started slowly from my left hand, and over a period of time, it worked its way all the way through my entire body to the point where I became almost wheelchair bound. So that's what the diagnosis is. That's what polymyalgia rheumatica is.
Okay, no, that's good. And I am familiar with it as well because my mother had a bout with it last year or a couple of years ago, and she's now pain free as well. But they typically prescribe steroids, right? So
Correct.
let's get into a little bit of what the diagnosis involved as far as the protocol that you were supposed to use from the Western medical approach or the allopathic medical approach. What did they tell you?
So that journey took me 6 months through all kinds of tests and um, going to all these different surgeons, thinking that maybe I had a nerve damage or they just weren't sure. So that journey took me 6 months. Finally, when all these specialists got through, they sent me to a rheumatologist, and I walked in the door there, and the person that I worked with there, walked in and saw the condition I was in and said, "Oh yeah, we can help you. We can fix this." I was stunned. I'm like, "What do you mean you can fix this? Just you're looking at me right now and you're saying that to me," but I didn't understand why. I mean, it brought me to tears because I was desperate.
Yeah.
And she said, "Yeah, this is polymyalgia rheumatica. You just have pain all over your body, and we'll put you on long-term steroids, and that'll fix your problem. But keep in mind, this is temporary. A year from now, when you come back to try to wean yourself off, it's only going to get worse, and you're going to have to up your dose, most likely at that point." That was the solution.
Right. And we,
And also keep in mind, she said to me, "This is the only option that we have, and it's the same option for the past 30 years."
yeah. And not to mention that long-term use of steroids weakens your system, weakens, like, increases the laxity of your joints. There's a number of different side effects that happen when you use steroids. And it's not the best protocol to be on for a long time. Let's back up a little bit, though. Let's talk about how this came on. Why don't you give me a little background on what you think might have brought it on?
Well, that's a great question because I've done some looking back. After going through this experience, I'm looking back and saying, how did this happen? I thought it was healthy.
Right.
But I look back and I know, like, everything, all the research that I've done, all the reading that I've done, stress plays a major role in health conditions. And in particular, what affected me was, there's definitely stress played a role. So I've had compounding stressor issues when it came to my career in finance.
Yeah.
I worked in a toxic work environment for a period of 7 years for a particular institution. And the people there, I didn't realize it at the time, were very toxic because there were issues that they chose not to resolve purposely to make my life difficult. And I didn't realize that at the time, because you don't think, like, how is that possible? Isn't everybody just here to help each other? Like, we're all here to get from point A to point B in the best way we can. But when I look back at what they did and how they did it, I'm like blown away. But even outside of that, I excelled because I was driven to be successful, and I wasn't going to let anything stop me. And I became very successful there. But the stress toll that it took on me emotionally and physically, I was in a highly stressed situation. And I worked long hours for a very extended period of time. For at least 3 of those 7 years, I probably worked, 15 to 18 hours a day, almost 7 days a week, nonstop.
So you burn out.
So that was the one of the look backs catalysts. But what really I know threw me over the edge was I was in I had a situation where I was had salmonella poisoning.
Oh.
And so when that was diagnosed, they put me on a heavy dose of antibiotics, which affect your gut bacteria and your health in that way. And I knew better. I knew better, but I was in a situation where I wasn't taking care of myself because of all the work, situation and my husband's medical situation. I was just focused on everybody else but myself. And so I took those antibiotics. I know I should have taken probiotics to offset those counter effect that, but I didn't. And about 2 weeks later, I was in a car accident with neck and back injuries. So I was laid up for 6 months with severe neck and back injuries. At the end of that period of time, I had a severe case of strep throat, and they put me on another heavy dose of antibiotics within 6 months.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot on the body. And like you said, you didn't know because what I mentioned in a lot of these episodes when we talk about health is the stress adaptation syndrome. And people don't realize that, stress hormone is pumped out. You might be a little weakened, but then you fight, your body is resilient. So you fight with that. You get used to that. You climb up this hill with the stress hormone and your body keeps adapting to those steps that you're making up that hill, or pretty soon the stress hormone is just so on and your adrenals are so taxed, but you don't realize it because you're adapting with it until all of a sudden these things happen. Like, you are more prone to salmonella. Somebody else who might have, I don't know how you picked it up, but somebody else who might have come across the salmonella might not get as sick. You got really sick, the strep throat, all of these things is because your system was weakened. But okay, so we go into that whole stress. Everybody in our world has some sort of stress, but your husband was also experiencing a lot of stress. Why don't you just shine light on your husband Ralph's medical issues a little bit and how he was ill and how you guys were just both in this situation where you were not healthy together, and what led you to kind of the light bulb go off and you were deciding, okay, I want to take health into my own hands. I want to figure out what the root cause of all of this is and how we can help ourselves. So bring us into Ralph's issues and then we can go from there.
Yes, so that's a great question because I feel like I was somehow prepared for this when, with my diagnosis, because for the last 25 years. My husband, Ralph, was diagnosed with cancer, and he's had 4 bouts of it over the years. But I went with him to all of his doctor appointments, and I found a consistent conversation that happened at every single specialist that we went to, and the same questions came up. Number one, the first question they would ask is, do you smoke? The second one was, do you work around toxic chemicals? And as time went on and I continued to get those questions that came from independent other doctors, it made me question, like, why do they think he's around toxic chemicals? So that caused me to do a look into his life. So I spent like days kind of going through every single thing that he touched, starting from the shower, the shampoo, the conditioner, the soap, and everything that was in the shower. And then I went to the sink there, the toothpaste and the shaving cream that he was using. And when I turned each one of these products over and I Googled the ingredients, I was horrified just in that small space at what was happening there, because I knew that when you're in the shower, your pores are wide open, right? Because of the steam and the heat, and your pores are wide open, and your skin is your largest organ in your body. So I knew that these things were getting absorbed into him. And that was the beginning of my journey. I lost my mind. I kind of lost my brain a little bit. And then I went to the laundry room and I looked at the laundry detergent and immediately went to the kitchen. At first, I probably turned into a little bit of a lunatic, because the knowledge of this sent me into a crazy land. I was like, what is happening to our lives? I basically couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So I threw everything out in our house, everything. And that was very emotionally difficult, because now you have to figure out, changing your buying habits is one of the most difficult things you do in your life. You buy the same toothpaste 30 years and you just go, you're out, you go get it, you're out, you go get it.
Yeah.
And to change your buying habits and find something that's not toxic 25 years ago wasn't so easy.
No, it's not easy.
Yeah. So that is the life we've been living for 25 years. Like, it prompted me to juice, and everything that we were eating was healthy and organic. And, so that's what started the process. He's doing really well. And we are very committed to this lifestyle and have been for a long time. And his health condition is incredible. People just can't believe it. And so that really prepared me for what I was going through, because when they handed me that prescription, Ralph looked at me and he begged me to refill it, please, because, he was taking care of me for all this time. And he saw the pain and agony I was in. So I got home and I said, I can't do it. I can't do it. He went and filled it, brought it home.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm not. And so that's what started my journey of my diagnosis. What is this?
Right.
And how do I solve my own problem now? And I was determined to figure that out now for myself. It was my journey to fix myself.
Okay, so we get into this journey, and what was the first thing you do? You mentioned a lot of authors and books that you started reading. You dove into, obviously cleaning up the household as far as like toxic things in the household. But what was that inspiration that you found from, you mentioned Dr. Josh Axe, and you had mentioned a couple books. You even have them. When I came into your home, I was lucky enough to go into Sharon's home to her test kitchen, which we'll talk about later. But 2 books that were on her counter, which she says she lives by and she loves, they changed her life. One is Dr. Josh Axe, Eat Dirt, right?
Yes. Oh,
so yeah. So why don't you
it should be in schools.
Right. I believe it. Yes. So you want to go into that and talk about how your research brought you to Dr. Josh Axe and all of the things that followed from there?
Yeah. So what happened initially was I immediately came home and I started researching polymyalgia rheumatica on Google, right? And, you have to pick and choose what you read and what information and where you get it. And I get that. But it took me down a journey of, like, once I started doing that and I, you put in alternative solutions to solve PMR, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm just throwing things into Google. But I love Instagram. Like, it's my happy place. And I love I've created foods, file folders and so forth over the years, right, for our health. And so I go to Instagram for my downtime. And once I went back to Instagram after I started searching polymyalgia rheumatica on Google, all of these functional doctors started showing up talking about pain and how they can solve your problem. I was mesmerized by this. I was like, what? I just couldn't believe it. Dr. Pompa and Dr. Lionel King and Dr. Josh Axe and Dr. Will Cole. And so all these doctors started popping up and, they offered classes. And of course, I'm going down this path. So I immediately jump on. Every one of them offered a 1-hour live webinar. You can join in and ask questions. I did that. And one by one, I just started dissecting what they had to offer. And then they gave me a one-on-one personal interview after that. Well, Dr. Josh Axe, I decided I'm really good at like solving problems. My career in finance really prepared me for that. So Dr. Josh Axe was offering a 4-month class, self-taught, right? And you take it without a coach, without anything. You just have to do it yourself and follow the instructions. I'm like, okay, I'm all in. I immediately signed up for his class. The 4-month class I did in the entire weekend. I took notes and I'm like, okay, here's what I need to do. That class, once you take the class and he educates you into health and wellness and food, and then you take a test, like a written test, answering these questions at the end, and it tells you if you answered these questions and here's the result, you have 5 options of what the problem is and how to fix it. It was that simple. And so in that class, it was determined that I had what he calls immune gut. So once I then turned into the immune gut category, it tells you exactly what foods to eat, immediately how to solve your problem, and the full scope of what to do to solve your problem. Now, I was almost in a wheelchair at this point.
And I remember you telling me when you first told me the story that within a matter of days, you started to realize that you could lift your arms again and that you could start to move.
Yes.
And there were just these.
Yeah, I couldn't get dressed. I couldn't put my arms over my head. I was like trapped in my body. The pain was so severe. I just couldn't get up in and out of a chair. I couldn't get in and out of a car. I was just desperate all the time in pain. So I was taking Motrin and Tylenol, but I knew that was, a bad thing, right? But I didn't have a choice because I was in such a desperate situation. So
the foods we were taught.
So Ralph immediately. We went to the groceries. We went to the grocery store. Ralph, I had the grocery list. He helped me get everything. Immediately get home, and I started doing it immediately. And within 2 days, my 88-year-old mother comes over. She's been watching me deteriorate, desperately scared for me. And I said, Mom, I think I can move my arms over my head. Look at. But I thought the placebo effect was here, right? Like I thought there's no way after a couple of days this could really happen, because how could that be possible? Well, within a week, I could absolutely get dressed. My mother would come over. I'm like, look, I can wave my arms. I can put them over my head. I don't have any pain in my arms. And within 30 days, my whole body was pain-free.
That's amazing. That is so powerful and amazing. And it just testament to the food is medicine. So what are some of these foods then? Tell us about the foods that you started integrating. Kind of give us that overview of what you started putting in your diet right away.
Well, in his class, he talks about these 6, 7 food groups that are so healing to your body, that the first thing he talks about is bone broth and the healing properties in bone broth. And, I didn't know what to think, but I thought, okay, I'm going to get it. So we went to Whole Foods. In the frozen food section, they have organic frozen bone broth, very pure stuff. So I started that way. I make my own now, but I started with that. So bone broth is the #1 most healing ingredient or food you can put into your body because of all of the nutrients from the bones and everything that's in there. And so that was #1. But #2 was fermented kefir, goat milk
Yeah.
kefir, and sauerkraut,
Yeah.
right? Because sauerkraut, they're both fermented, they're natural probiotics.
Yes.
I was like, well, no wonder, right? And so those were the two things there. But one of the most important is coconut,
Yes.
because it's an antimicrobial and all of the beautiful effects for coconut. So I actually bought MCT coconut oil organic, and it comes in a liquid form, and it has no taste to it, because at that point I did not like the taste of coconut. Now I love it. But so I was taking tablespoons of that throughout the day, just a tablespoon of MCT coconut oil, not knowing the effects of this or what it would do. Well, no wonder I was healing so quickly. So those, I was taking in all of those all throughout the day. And then blueberries as
Yeah.
a superfood, right? Butternut squash, another superfood. Chia seeds and flax seeds. All of these are just strong superfoods and healing for your body. And so I was just eating those. There was a much broader group of foods, but everything was healing, so you could allow your gut lining to heal. And I didn't know it at the time, right? But the diagnosis there with the, leaky gut, it makes sense. You've got to let your gut heal. So you need these healing foods to be able to allow that to happen. And so the linings to my intestines were healing over that short period of time, allowing now these foods to get to my cellular level and into my mitochondria to fix the overall problem. It just makes so much logical sense now that I understand what happened and why. But those were
Yeah.
the foods that I started with to solve my problem, and I still eat them to this day. I will never
Not.
not have them.
Yeah. No, it's okay. So we have bone broth, we have coconut oil, we have fermented goat milk, fermented sauerkraut, blueberries, butternut squash, chia seeds. These are nature's pharmacy, right? We always
Yes.
hear about it. And really, we are not evolved enough to be in this processed food world. I mentioned this in some past episodes, but the human body is not evolved enough to adapt to all the chemical overload, the processed food, the preservatives, the fillers, everything that's put in our food. And so it makes complete sense that we would go back to food as medicine that's been used for millions of years. And that
Yes.
really up until, 100 and 150 years ago, we really were just using food as medicine, right? I grew up with a grandmother who made,
Exactly.
yes, exactly. So it's not like this is some oddity. It's really the way it should be. But yet, if you say it out loud now, everything is so-called political, but it's just basics. It's going back to the basics, right?
It's
And
totally going back to the basics.
and informing people that food is medicine is the most important thing we can do for our families, for the future of our kids' DNA and everything, because obviously, after all this research, that we can change and improve our DNA through the foods that we're eating and through what we're thinking. So let's get into this, though. I do you have anything else to say about the foods or Josh Axe? Because I want to get into your take on the food as medicine topic.
Yeah, I think we can move on to food as medicine, because that's really what he teaches. Like when I read his book and got deeper into it, I was so amazed at the basic human body and what we need and what we're not getting because of the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry. So
Yeah.
it's really remarkable to see where we are.
Let's go back to what you were eating. Were you eating that unhealthy, or did you think that you were healthy before? Like, give us an example of maybe how you and your husband were eating before you started the overhaul in the kitchen.
So yeah, I thought we were very healthy. So we did not eat processed foods, right? Because it had been a long journey to get to that point. But and everything that we were eating was organic. But what I didn't realize, because I've kind of looked at this deeper too, is I ate salads every single day, raw vegetables. And one of the main things he said was, do not eat anything raw, no raw vegetables, because they are so difficult to digest and they tear up, and your gut can't heal if you're constantly eating those things. So all of the things I did to myself, thinking I'm eating healthy and still having these problems. I was so confused. And when that light bulb came on, I was like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. I had to give up salads. You could cook the vegetables, but I
Yeah.
had to stop eating salads I did that for an extended period of time by choice because I was just still afraid. I've incorporated them back into my life, but that, I believe, my own personal opinion, is really where the main problem was for me, on top of alcohol.
Okay.
I
Yeah. Big.
I loved my red wine, and I did my fair share of drinking it over the weekends because I was so stressed in my job. I couldn't wait for the weekends to come and just sit back and relax and drink my glass of red wine. Well, I now know what I was doing there, and I did not drink organic red wine. And I
Mhm.
think of all the pesticides that were in the grapes and the toxins that were in there. So I'm certain it was a combination of those things that were coupled with all of the, main problems, when it
And so
came to food.
you started eliminating alcohol then, and you said recently that you're completely alcohol free now for a couple of years, right?
Yeah, it's been 2 years now. And I can't imagine going back because when I realized when I can feel what the next day felt like after drinking,
Hmm.
and I will never allow that in my life again. And I now know the toxins that were in there that were causing that, and what my body's telling me something. I can't get off the couch. I watch the sunrise and sunset. And I'm
Yeah.
just on the couch in front of the TV like a zombie.
Yeah. Well, like wasting the day away, right? Just because it's like
Yeah.
you're ill. Yeah. A hangover is not a fun thing. It's just, and it doesn't have to be a lot of alcohol to put yourself into that mode, you know?
No, no. And so, and then after that, okay, let's go out and drink a Bloody Mary and start all over again to solve that problem. So yeah, there was quite a bit of that, even though I knew that we shouldn't, but I thought, well, I'm healthy. I can drink this.
Yeah. Well, now relating it to Ralph's issues, like you said he's come around, his health is really on the mend. And what have you seen with his health? Like bring the listeners up to speed on how he is with the cancer diagnosis and, his energy levels. And he looked great. When I saw him, I thought he looked amazing, looked like a triathlete or something, you would never
Oh,
know that he was ill.
no, it's remarkable, and people make remarks over him all the time, and are shocked when they hear, like, so his first diagnosis was bladder cancer at a very young age, and again, the doctors are like, cigarettes, toxic chemicals. I didn't think much of it at the time, but it wasn't until later that kept coming up. So he was able to get that taken care of fairly easily, but back then there was an antacid he used to take that all the time that is now a class action lawsuit, and it causes bladder cancer. And we had them all over the house. He took them all the time. So now, a look back, we are certain that that was what caused his bladder cancer.
Let's stop there though. He was taking the antacids because of stress or upset or the diet that he was eating or a
Yeah, the
combination of
diet.
both.
I'm sure it
The
was the diet.
the diet. Okay. And what was his diet at that time? What was he eating?
Well, we ate everything. We were huge carnivores. Like, we would eat steaks and ribs and throw all the sauce on it. We were the typical American diet, and we ate, potato chips, and we ate everything that you see on television, dunked into the milk, and all the hormones and steroids in the milk, and the chemicals in they're not really cookies, right? You look at the ingredients, that's not food. So we ate, that's what we ate
Mm-hmm.
at
Yeah.
that point
So,
in our lives. So that we didn't start changing that until the second diagnosis, which was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
mm-hmm.
And so once he got that diagnosis, um, again, now I'm taking a deep dive. And that's when I started cleaning house. So yeah, I thought we were eating healthy, and little by little we started, getting the meats out of our lives because of what's in them, and your body can't, excuse me, the digestion process of it all. So we're trying to figure it out, but yeah, so we started eating clean as time went by,
Okay.
but it took a while to get there.
It does take a while. And I feel like people get overwhelmed and they feel like I can't do this because they want to do it right away. But it does take time. Even myself have been in this body of work since I've been in my early 20s, and eating clean now, like with no processed foods, I'm there, but is my husband there? No. Are my kids there? No, because they see everything that the kids are eating at school. And it's like, I don't want to buy that, veggie straws come home
Yes.
from Sam's Club, and I get upset. I say, this is not anything but just powder, like processed powder. It's not a vegetable. It's not healthy.
There's no nutrition.
No.
There's no nutritional value in it.
No, there
And
isn't.
yeah, so
It's hard.
yeah, it took a long time to get there. But so his second diagnosis, it's interesting. As I continued that journey with him, with all the specialists and doctors at all the different university hospitals and so forth, I'd bring my little notebook and I'd ask questions, because now I'm doing some research. And I started asking about toxic chemicals, and could this be a potential, like, is this something that could be causing this problem? And they would not talk to me. They absolutely will not have conversations. They won't talk about anything. And it wasn't until we got to the University of Illinois Hospital, the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma specialist, specifically for non-Hodgkin's there. At that point in time, Roundup there was a class action lawsuit, and is a class action lawsuit on Roundup and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And Ralph is an avid outdoors guy and gardening, and he loves it. And he was using that all the time.
Okay.
Back in the day. So he signed up for that class action lawsuit, which I know could take years and years and years, but they finally admitted for the first time that yes, the Roundup and
glyphosate.
Yeah.
Glyphosate. That's a whole nother rabbit hole we could go down, but it's just the amount of glyphosate that's poured on American crops, and even worldwide. Some countries don't allow it at all, but it's toxifying the humans. It's just one of those things that we're going to have to work hard against. But so he's doing well now. You've converted him. You've got this changeover.
Yes.
Where are you?
Oh, sorry. He continues that journey, and we keep modifying and modifying and modifying. And alcohol has been another one that we've tried to get out of his life, because it's such a social event, right? You're going to socialize, and everybody's got a drink in your hand. And if you don't, actually people, hey, here, get a drink, like, so we've learned I make mocktails when we go to functions, and I make what looks like a drink. And nobody asks me a question about what I'm drinking. Yeah. And so I've finally gotten him to that point as well. And so he finally realizes, that do I want to really dig deep and really recognize food as medicine myself, or do I want to do chemotherapy? Right? You've got a choice.
That's a big choice, yes. And it's an easy choice when you know how powerful it can be. Like you said, within days, you were lifting your arms. Like you couldn't lift your arms, you were immobilized. And within days of integrating that, those therapeutic foods, you could see a difference. And so now he's sold, right? He's sold, he's working. And you said that he's working really hard at eliminating the pattern of going back to the way he was. You had said that he gets on a stretch and then maybe he'll fall back into the way that he used to be. It takes a while, right? It's hard to pave a new neural pathway, a new habit.
Well, it is. And, I didn't realize until more recently how they've taken these chemists in the food industry to alter the food, to put chemicals into the food that make it so addictive. And it's hard to get away from because of the food scientists. And I did not know that. Like, that to me was a shocking revelation. I was like, what?
Yeah, that is shocking.
That helps. The more we know, the more we read, the more we educate ourselves, the more we realize we're on a path alone. Nobody's they're only here to sell us. Like everything, we're bombarded in every direction, like from everything that we listen to the television, and they're just trying to get us to buy their products, regardless of how toxic they are.
I think
you have to be your own health advocate.
You definitely do, but I think things are going to change. There might take a while for some change, but I think we have to have hope. I think they will start to change as we start
Yes.
telling these stories, as we start broadcasting these wonderful stories of triumph over the pharmaceutical over the protocol for pharmaceuticals that you had. People are realizing that they can do a lot of this and they don't want to hear it, but we're here, freedom of our speech to tell the story and be testament. So where are you guys now in terms of, you basically summed it up, but as far as your mindset, you've tackled these issues, you're feeling good. Where is both of you at with your mindset on health, and where are you going forward with this?
So yeah, we're taking it deeper. So Ralph is right now in the middle of first a liver cleanse and a kidney cleanse. Then he's into a lymph node cleanse and a parasite cleanse. So we're taking it like deeper to just really like recognize what we need to do for our bodies. And so I'm really thankful for that. I'm just digging deeper and deeper into the books. Like I don't go anywhere without my Dr. Josh Axe book. I love him. But and I usually have 5 to 10 of them at home with me at all times, and I give them out everywhere I go. Like I take them with me and I hand them to people because people are sick.
Let's talk
And
about that. Yeah, let's talk about that. You had brought up in our conversation about a woman in your building and how you wanted to help her because she came down with the same diagnosis. This is a powerful story. Why don't you share that?
yeah, so we moved into a new building, and the woman directly below came up to introduce herself to us. And I'm standing at the door, and we're talking, and she said she's out of breath, and she says, "I have to sit down. I'm in so much pain." I said, "Okay, there's a bench out there. Let's sit on it." So we sat down, or she did. And as she sat down, she said, "I have polymyalgia rheumatica, so I'm in intense pain." I looked at her and I said, "So do I." She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I was just diagnosed with polymyalgia rheumatica a year ago." And she said, "That can't be possible because look at you." Anyway, that opened up that book. So I said, "Well, if you're interested, I'll tell you." And she said, "Yes, tell me." So I told her I ran in, I got Dr. Josh Axe's book. I said, "Here it is." And this book is actually the book form of the online class.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that until I read it. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this was my class I took." So I said, "This is my class. The first half of it tells you all about what's going on. And the second half, you take the test and it gives you what to do to solve your problem. Are you interested in it?" She said, "Yes, absolutely." She took the book, she left, called me up a couple days later. I said, "Because if you want help, I'll help you." And she said, "Okay." So she calls me up and said, "I read the book. I want to do this." I said, "Okay, I'll take care of everything. I'll bring all the food to you." So I went grocery shopping. I made the bone broth. I made the smoothies with all this, the blueberries and the kefir. And I got the coconut, everything. I got all of it. I put sticky notes on everything on what to do. Put it in a grocery cart. I brought it down. I left it at the front door with all the instructions. She was so thankful. "Thank you, thank you." Then she kept saying, "Well, I can't start it today because I've got this party and I'm going to be eating this. And I can't start it today because I'm going to get this. I have this party and I'm eating this." Well, after a couple of days, she called me up and said, "I can't tell you how thankful I am for what you've done for me, but I just can't do it. I'm so
Oh,
set in my ways with the foods that I eat." She's never cooked in her life. She's never used her stove. And
oh,
she only eats packaged, processed foods.
oh no, that's
She
sad.
wouldn't do it. She couldn't do
Yeah,
it. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's just foods that are delicious, but you don't know how delicious they are, I guess, if you're
yeah.
so entrenched into these foods that are chemically altered."
Well, right. And then there are those foods that can be consumed that are processed that are addictive. People are used to that
Yes,
taste and they work in the brain, they cross the blood brain barrier and they get us addicted.
yes,
And they know that.
yes,
That's proven. And so it's hard to start new habits. It's really hard to change behavior and it's hard to
it
change
is.
your mindset. 90%
I
of it is your
agree.
mindset. Mindset.
I agree. And I think
Hmm.
about this often because this blew my mind because now she's in a nursing home.
Oh,
She
that's so
she's back
sad.
in Ohio now in a nursing home.
Uh-huh.
And I think about that and I think, how is it possible that, like you wouldn't even have tried that for a week or 3 weeks, 4 weeks? to see if it's going to make a change. Instead, you end up in a terrible situation. And I think it's just that people are entrenched in their ways and they can't change. And
Yeah.
it's just too much work, but it's
Well,
really not.
yeah, and they're chained to the food addictions, and
Yeah.
that takes a lot of work. It does. It takes a lot of mental work, takes a lot of support. That's why you had enrolled in a course, you had a support system. People need the support system. They need the encouragement and the motivation to just start step by step, day by day. And after they can go, the hardest part is the beginning, because the beginning is where you're the weakest, where you need to keep that reinforcement going. It's like getting past the first week, the first 10 days of changing the habit, then you break through. It's about breakthroughs, and so we'll touch on how you're going to do that in the future, because I know you really want to continue this work. I think it's so great.
Oh, I'm so in love with it. But what I've also found is that I have to be careful. I have to be careful about who I speak to about this or talk to about it, because people don't like their lives disrupted. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
Because if you put this out there and it forces them to think about it, and then they think about what's in their lives, it's too overwhelming. And people get upset if you continue to have these conversations. They just don't want to hear it. So I've had to kind of keep myself like bottled up, like, don't say anything, don't say anything. Like Ralph and I will be at functions and somehow these conversations will come up about like what these people might be eating or they're talking about. We'll look at each other and we'll poke each other like, don't say anything, don't do it, don't do it. Because it can like take the conversation down a negative path and like we're over it. Like if somebody wants help, great, we're there to help. But yeah, people
It's a
don't want to hear it. It's very interesting.
It's a trigger, because food and eating is one of the most primitive things that we do, aside from,
Yes.
sleeping, breathing, and being alive, right? So we're eating, and how we're eating is, yeah, so personal for a lot of people. It's a personal
Yes.
thing. And I know the feeling, because I've been in this for a long time. I remember sitting across from my sister 20 years ago, and she's like, "Oh, you're one of those health nuts. You don't drink. You're no fun." I thought,
Yes.
no, it doesn't mean that you can't drink. It's okay. Like
How
you
does
can,
what I do affect what you do? It's just, yeah, it's
yeah.
interesting. I will say over the years, like my sister, I'm so excited to watch her every time I see her. And like you said, my test kitchen, I'm so excited because, I'm constantly trying out new alternative ways to make foods that are healthy with simple ingredients and sugar-free and so forth. So I've been with my sister and all of a sudden she's like, what is this? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And so she's changing her life little by little by little. And so is my mother. And so it's been really fun. Of course, our daughter totally on board. It's been fun to watch our family go down
Yeah.
this path.
Well, it's a ripple effect. I mean, they can see the vibrance, the vitality in both of you. And I mean, they'd have to be dumb to not to call your family dumb, but like anybody would have to be, it's questionable that we're looking at the result of whole foods. Food is medicine. We're looking at the result, and the result is beautiful, vibrant living and no drugs, right?
No, exactly. No, no drugs. It's interesting. I'm going to tell you a little story. I hope you don't mind, but
No, I
it's
want you
about
to.
it. Okay, it's about my mother. So
Mhm.
she went, she's really good about, going to the doctors and getting her physicals, and she's going to be 88. Well, just recently there's a thyroid problem right now for her.
Oh.
And so I was like, oh no, it starts in the thyroid, right? That little gland that's there to, you know, detoxify, but it can't keep up with all of this, right? Ralph had this problem, so we know all about it. Dr. David Brownstein is also a holistic doctor who we've added into Ralph's life along the way. So in conjunction with, and he's been a remarkable resource as well in his books. But thyroid is that's his baby. So Ralph had thyroid problems. My mother now has thyroid problems. And I was like, oh my gosh, mom, we've got to fix this now before it gets to the point where they're going to want to take your thyroid out. Now you're on these thyroid medications and it's just a nightmare. And as you get older, this is a problem. So I said, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get you on iodine, and we're going to get you on mushrooms, and all the reishi mushrooms and lion's manes, and so, and she's like, well, but why? And I'm like, well, here. So I get her the books, like, read these books, and then we'll come back around. And so I said to her, I said, I want you to picture when we go to the doctor, I want you to picture you have a headband, and on that headband are springs, and on top of the springs are dollar signs. And every time you walk around, there's dollar signs floating over your heads, because that's what you are to the doctors.
Yeah,
And so,
unfortunately.
yeah. So anyway, so what I went into her house. We were there for the hurricane, and we were staying with her. I go into the refrigerator, and I'm horrified at what I'm seeing. She's got 4 bottles, maybe 5 bottles of the plastic containers of these coffee creamers.
Mm-hmm.
Because when they're on sale, she's stocking up on them all. And I look at them, I'm like, oh my gosh. So she went out for the day, and I got a black magic marker, and I drew skull and crossbones on all of the things in her refrigerator that are my opinion poison.
The
So
skull and
she comes
crossbones.
home, and I'm like, Mom, go to the fridge. Let's take a look at what's in there. And she opens the door, and she's like, what? I don't see anything. I'm like, look at your creamers. What do you see there? She's like, oh, she starts laughing, because she sees the skull and crossbones. I'm like, Mom, I said, let's take these things out and look at them. So we turned them over. I read the ingredients, Google the ingredients. What is it? And she's like, oh, I
Yeah.
love my coffee creamer. So I'm like, well, let's make one. So I took
Yeah.
a little sip of it to see, what is it she's trying to get to in this flavor? I'm like, oh, I can do this, Mom. I can do this. Let's go to the test kitchen. So I have come up with an alternative for her for coffee creamer. And now she makes it herself at home, and she loves it. And
That's
it's
amazing. And
amazing.
I was able to test some of your sweet treats and the wonderful, and I wanted
Oh
to make
yeah.
it an earmark to what you said about sugar free. Now, I want to tell the listeners that it's not that you're using any fake products or fake sugars. Like when you're using this, sugar free means that you're just not using a lot of sugar at all, right? You're using, in place of sugar, what are you using? I guess would be my question.
So
Maybe,
maple syrup,
yeah, I was going to say.
organic maple syrup, organic honey, like
Mhm.
Manuka honey is like one of the best things you can put in your body. But and dates, organic dates. So what
Mhm.
I've learned is that dates do not spike your glycemic index.
Mhm.
They just do a really nice job. And so I make, I use dates. So, I simmer them down to get them soft and, bring out the sweetness in them. So dates, so those are the 3 go-tos. And then I'll add if it's not sweet enough and I don't want to add more of any of those items, I will take a tiny pinch of organic stevia.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. So those are the alternatives, which are great. Those are nature's uh, sweetness, right? Nature's sweetness. We don't have to manipulate the organic structure,
Exactly.
and we don't have to manipulate anything. It's just what you're finding, and our bodies will assimilate and metabolize things that are found in nature way more efficiently than something that's made in a lab, for sure. And that's what.
Exactly. It's nutrient. You're providing nutrients for your body instead of something that your body can't process.
Yeah. One thing I want to take a moment for before we close up is you found something interesting when you had looked at this from the 30,000 foot view. You found something that you realized in your diagnosis about Western medicine and the labeling of your diagnosis. And I really want you to shed light on it now, because it's a big thing. It might be something that people don't want to talk about, but it's about how it's classified. And I think that it was a light bulb that went off in my head too. It's like, yeah, there's fairness that needs to be applied to a lot of these diagnoses, because sometimes these diagnoses lead us into other situations that we don't even think about. So do you want to shed light on that?
Yeah. So as we get older, and I think about like medical insurance and health, life insurance, things of that nature. Well, in order to obtain those, you have to fill out forms. And in those forms, it asks you if you've had any previous medical conditions or previous um, conditions that hang out there. And cancer, hello, is a big one. And how do you get life insurance when you have a cancer diagnosis? Nobody will take on
Right.
insurance. Well, now I have a pre-existing condition in the medical world because it's all over all my medical documents now that I have an autoimmune condition. And so that is going to make it much more difficult. We just met with an attorney to talk about insurance, and he's like, oh, wait a minute. You've got autoimmune and you've got cancer.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole new ball game because I don't know that we're going to be able to get insurance. And so
Mm-hmm.
now I've been diagnosed with an autoimmune condition in the Western world, but in the holistic world or functional medicine, I don't have an autoimmune condition.
Right.
I have my intestinal lining that was uh, uh, permeable.
The permeability. Yeah, I know it's a hard one. I
Yes,
have trouble with it too. The permeability
intestinal
or
permeability.
yeah, leaky
And
gut.
so that's what I had, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And so I fixed it
you
with the
fixed
help
it.
of
It's
Dr.
gone.
Josh
Yeah.
Axe. I don't have an autoimmune condition. I have no issues. It's now been like a year and a half, 2 years. I mean, I have absolutely no pain. I'm back to running. I'm back to doing everything. But that has altered my ability
To get
to
insurance.
get, yes.
Yeah.
So it's really a sad situation because like when you read Dr. Marty McCary's book, he's from John Hopkins and he's a high level physician. He came out with a book. It's called Blind Spots. And I'm reading that book right now. And it talks about in chapter number 2, he's talking about antibiotics. They've known for years, the medical industry knows what antibiotics do to your gut microbiome, and they know what it does to children. At a
Yeah.
young age, ear infections, antibiotics,
Yeah.
antibiotics, antibiotics. No wonder our children are all from a young age on all these pharmaceutical drugs, and they know it. In his
Mm-hmm.
book, they know it. Good Energy by Dr. Casey Means, she knows it. It's unbelievable to me that they create all these medical problems that create this circle of all these, they were going to put me on steroids long term, right? But
Yeah.
they know what that's going to do. It's going to ruin my bones. It's going to cause further problems. That's going to put me on further drugs down the
Oh
line.
yeah. Just keep everybody a little sick. That's it. They want to keep everybody just a
Exactly.
little bit sick, just a little bit sick, so they have to keep the cycle going.
But yeah, in my eyes, I have no medical diagnosis because I
No,
solved my problem.
you
And
did.
anybody that is a doctor who knows the truth would agree with me on that.
And do you know, I have no knowledge of this, but do you know if they can reverse and take that off or say that you're cured or that is there any reversing your paperwork or your file that people look at, when this happens and you're healthier than healthier than most people that are given insurance, right? So your
Right.
health, yeah. Is there any way of reversing that? Or does the attorney not
Well,
know?
I just, this all just came to me over the last couple of days, right? Like I'm processing as I'm getting, knowing that we're going to do this podcast, it's forcing me to dig deeper and think a little bit more about like, okay, like, well, wait a minute. I don't really have an autoimmune disease. And I'm just now realizing that the attorney is saying that I can't get insurance or it's going to be difficult or way more expensive if I can get it. I'm like, well, that's not fair because I really don't have an autoimmune, but I'll have to look into that because this just
Yeah.
came to me like the idea of this just came to me yesterday. Like,
Yeah.
wait a minute.
Hmm.
So,
That's a big, 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 big topic. That is, I'm glad that we mentioned it. And that's something that we can go back to in the future, another
yeah,
conversation,
because
because
I'm
it's
sure they
huge.
won't have the conversation.
Yeah.
I would be certain they won't have a conversation about this. Oh,
Yeah.
well, it just is. You just got lucky.
Yeah. No.
It's in remission. I'm
Yeah.
sure is what I'm going to get.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. Another hole to dive into. But Sharon, right now you are so healthy, so vibrant. What I like to ask my listeners, what is your favorite way to nourish yourself daily? And that can be either with food or mentally or physically, emotionally. What do you do daily that just fills you up?
Well, I'm still completely focused on food every day. So, I start my day with a glass of water, but you can make your own electrolytes for your own water instead of buying this toxic stuff that's marketed as an electrolyte, right? You just put salt in your water. Now I'm talking good salt, right? This Morton salt is full of anti-caking compounds and chemicals. We're talking about, Baja salt, mineral salt, right? That nourishes your body. It's an electrolyte. You put it in your water. And then I throw a splash of apple cider vinegar in there and I drink that, right? Then I go to my bone broth. Then I go to my smoothie. I really have not gotten off of these foods because I know how nourishing they are. They're like the top superfoods, right? So I just made bone broth this week. So I'm still kind of doing that, but because you and I went to yoga together, so now I'm getting into yoga, right? And so I'm trying to do all of these kinds of things. I'm, reading more. And I'm also like, I asked my mother, I said, would you allow me to come into your house and detoxify your house? Because a lot of people are overwhelmed by it, even my mother. Because when I go in there and I look in the laundry room and I'm going like, oh my gosh, right? I look under her cabinets, like her perfume. Like for Christmas, I bought all my family gifts that were non-toxic and organic because perfume is so highly full of toxic chemicals and you don't think about it. You spray it and you breathe it in your lungs every day of your life.
I know.
I bought roll-on essential oils for everybody.
There are
right?
so
it's so deep. You could just go so deep, but I would love to go into my mother's home and just say, could I detoxify your home, get rid of everything and show you what to buy in place? Because I think that's where the most difficult problem is for most people. And I thought, gee, wouldn't that be fun? Like all of Marco Island, I could detoxify homes.
You can do it. Yeah, that could be your next mission. And you talked about your interest in health coaching. And I think that you have a huge passion and purpose for this work. I mean, you could easily make a business out of that. Most people don't know where to start. And I want to say you inspired me last week. I knew about, you and I had mentioned about the laundry detergent, how I used to make my homemade laundry detergent. Well, you fall out of that habit because you get busy with kids. But I just last week when we had our conversation, I said, this is enough. I went and I got my mason jars and I've been washing in our dishwasher the past 4 or 5 cycles, the alternative to dishwashing soap, which is the salt, the baking soda and the vinegar, right? I put those 3 things into our dishwasher and it was just fine because I used your ratios. And I wasn't smelling that chemical smell. And then the glasses, I told the girls, you won't taste the residue of soap and the soap is bad. And it's amazing. So there are so many things. I know you have a book. It's going to be coming in the future. No, I do. I know you have it, Sharon. It's going to be great. You're going to lay out all of these great protocols for people, the healthy protocol, how to detox your pantry, how to detox your home. I mean, you've got it right there.
Yeah, I see it in people's faces. They don't want to hear it, but I know it's because it's overwhelming. And when I was very discouraged when I saw my neighbor who couldn't even eat the food when I made it for her. And I thought, that is the problem. People just don't want to change their habits. And that's a really hard thing to overcome. And I thought, well, it's kind of pointless for me to even consider that because I'm going to be just butting up against that. People don't believe it or really believe it, and they want to eat what they want to eat. And so that's a challenge.
It is a challenge, but you find your people. You find, your tribe.
There's so many sick people.
You find the tribe that is attracted to your vibe, and that is the truth. There are a lot of people that resonate with you. You have to find them. They're out there. I know it. And then
I found you.
Yeah. Well, immediately we clicked. I mean, we talked for maybe 2 to 5 minutes on New Year's Day. We were in connection with the same thought processes. And I thought, this is amazing. So definitely a divine intervention, I believe, for sure. But you had one last thought. You had said, if pharmaceutical drugs are a cure, why do we need a refill?
Yes.
You had said that was one last thought to sum it all up. You want to say anything?
Truth.
It is. Yeah.
It's the truth. And I think about that because they wanted to put me on long-term steroids, long-term, right? And she also said, when I come back a year from now, they're going to have to double up on that dose or make it even more difficult. So ultimately, what they're saying to you is, they're not looking for, or do they have an interest in finding what the root of the problem is
Yeah.
at all? They're
Yeah.
just covering it up with
Right.
these pharmaceutical drugs. And they're all like, that's the only thing they're allowed to talk about. Like they're very, very regimented in what they're being taught and told and how they can handle things. So it's never going to fix you're never going to fix yourself if you take, obviously there's a place for these things that are life-saving. I get that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But what I learned was 80% of the medical diagnoses that aren't like surgery driven or, broken arms and limbs and all of that kind of thing. But 80% of the disease out there is solved through
Yeah.
food. It's
Yeah.
not through prescription drugs.
Right. It's the chronic disease crisis. So the people with the chronic issues, if they turn to food, they would see improvement. And
Exactly.
it's
So you're not going to.
it's a bold statement, but it's true. It's bold to say like they will see improvement. It's bold, but it's true. If you put the effort in, give yourself a week's time on those superfoods, and then decide, is it better or worse? And
Yeah,
that's
I mean, it's as simple as that.
Mhm.
It boils down to you have to be your own health advocate. If you want to be healthy, you just can't follow along on what you're being told. You have to ask questions. If you don't ask questions, you're never going to get to the solution.
Right. Well, Sharon, it's been so great. You had so many golden points to make about food as medicine and your health diagnosis, Ralph's health diagnosis. And now that you're living so vibrantly and healthy, I love it. It's a triumphant story. Where are you going from here? Do you have any plans? Obviously, you want to help detox Marco Island, but do you have a set path? Are you going to continue maybe health coaching or trying to help others on their health journey?
Well, so after my career of almost 40 years in the world of finance and the stress and what I was through health-wise, I'm now 6 months retired. Woohoo!
Yes.
I feel so fortunate because I no longer have to sell my life and time for money.
Mhm.
And I embrace it. And I'm so thankful. It's been 6 months. And so, but I also think a lot, about all these books that I've been reading. And I'm going to just tell you a quick little story because I follow Dr. Josh Axe and he's my hero. He came up on my Instagram post last night and he's looking for health coaches. And I was like, oh no.
Synchronicity. I love it. That's so serendipitous. I love it.
So I couldn't help but fill out the application, even though I'm like, what are you doing? Stop it, slap yourself, enjoy, embrace your retirement. But I couldn't stop myself. And so I may never hear from them in any way, shape, or form, but I do think somehow, some way, my test kitchen, right? Like I bring people over all the time. We just had friends over and I had them all lined up at the bar, like I did with your family. And I'm like, okay, guys, here's what's in my test kitchen. And I watch their reaction. And then I expand on it. And I think, this has a place somehow, some way.
It
Maybe
does.
that's where I go. I just don't know, but I feel
I
something.
believe I do. I believe it's coming. It is. You are going to continue to share the passion and the message of this. So you're going to do great work with this. Great things are coming. And where can people find you if they want to connect with you or message you? You're on Instagram, right?
Yes, I'm on Instagram. So it's at Sharon Waldecki. So SharonWaldecki.
Yes, and that will be in the show notes as well. So you can find her Instagram and message her if you want any insight into the food as medicine. And
I'm on Facebook also. And when I post, like I just did my bone broth post, so I just started posting pictures again. I haven't posted for a while because I'm just trying to, embrace my life a little bit. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to start posting I juice in the mornings and I take pictures of all the juicing and the fruits and vegetables. And I'm going to start posting those and the foods that I'm making, all these alternative desserts and foods. And so I see myself starting in at least that area.
I think
And
that's
when I
great.
post on Instagram, they go to Facebook as well.
Okay. No, I love that. I'm the food photographer too, so you and I share that passion. I love taking pictures of all of the foods, all the meals, all those wonderful vibrant colors. It just makes you happier to have all of those live foods in your house, you know?
Oh my gosh, people open up our refrigerator and it's just all, you know, vegetables, and it's like a, a garden in the refrigerator, and they're like,
Yeah.
what do you do with all that? Right? Like I make when I make my own teas, I brew my own teas from the pulp of what's coming out of my juicer, because I can't get myself to throw it out, because I know
Yes.
there's turmeric and ginger and
Yes.
there's like lemons and limes, and I'm not throwing this out. I'm going to simmer it down and put some, you know, other tea leaves in there with it and brew a tea and
Reuse
like that.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
I love that.
So yeah, it's fun to go into the refrigerator and see, when people go in there and see what it looks like.
In
Like,
your food, I call it the food lab or the cooking lab. It's so fun
yes,
teaching the kids, my
yes,
kids now, especially like this is life right here. The kitchen is a major force in your life. You need to learn how to use everything in the kitchen. You need to know everything about the foods that you're eating. So, yeah, well, I love this conversation with you, Sharon. Thank you so much for your time today.
oh, it was
And
so fun. It's so great to visit with you.
and I'm sure we'll have other conversations down the line. You will be back.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So thank you. You can find Sharon Waldecki on Instagram or Facebook. And for now, nourish yourself in the best way you can with food and vibrant people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Sharon's story is one of many that demonstrates how powerful whole foods and clean eating can be at restoring health. Food truly is our pharmacy and our medicine. If you want to dive deeper into clean eating, consider joining my Spring Clean Your Health Spring Detox starting March 18th. More details can be found at joannepavin.com. That's JoannePavin.com. If you enjoyed this episode and found value in it, please share the link with a friend and consider giving me a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to watch the full episode, head over to my YouTube channel at Joanne Pavin and hit subscribe so you never miss a video cast. Stay tuned for the great lineup of Women in Health this month for Women's Month, and thanks for listening.